This is the whole challenge for us human beings, that we on one side have to deal with the conditionings which we have, to take care of very basic needs, deal with it in a practical way, and come in terms with the game of the world, and at the same time to go about the life in such a way that we are not the whole time engaged and preoccupied with the world and the program and the conditioning which we have around it. In the normal way of going, most of the time people are following certain patterns of reacting. That means they follow not in such a conscious way, but more or less automatically, the conditioning that you have to be successful, you have to attain prestige and power, then only you can be happy, then only you will be somebody, then only you will have some worthiness in this world. And these are the kind of attitudes which become a settlement in us, and very often we don't see that it is part of a conditioning, that it is not the whole truth. It is only an aspect to get started in the world, and it can be an orientation for the beginning. But it is necessary to come to recognize that our reality is more. It is necessary to come in terms with the truth of ours, where we see that we are not just this personality, we are not just this body, we are not just this what is obvious and visible, but our reality has a different basis, a different depth. And it is in becoming aware and connecting to this deeper dimension of our reality that we also become capable to be with the game of the world in the right way. And in that sense, this statement which you are referring to is very valuable, because everybody is following this first part, trying to be successful, trying to be powerful, trying to be superior, trying to be somebody, trying to get more riches, and which is all around power, which is all around achieving something, being successful. But this idea of success is a one-sided way of looking, and that is what we need to realize. You may have all the wealth, but if you don't know to be with yourself, if you don't know what way to relax and just be, and if you have not experienced what you experience in those moments when you are in peace, when you are in an inner quality of harmony and silence, and feel the wonder of life, feel the beauty of life, feel the blessedness of this existence. Without that, we get too serious about all this power and prestige and success, and this is the trap. And this is from which, especially in the modern societies, the human beings are suffering. If you look and observe carefully, then you can see this, as far as the material success is concerned, most of the people have everything through which they can live basically well. It is not the kind of situation where everybody is struggling for survival in the earlier kind of ways. But there is another kind of poverty, another kind of emptiness, which makes the human beings more deeply dissatisfied, more deeply get bound to pain and suffering. And that is the inner poverty, where the human beings have become so much preoccupied with these values, with these standards and the concepts which is there in the program and the judgment which is arising out of it. When you are only seeing these values, these concepts, these beliefs which are part of a program, and don't see that what we see through that is not the reality, it is a projection through our past, and start making judgments on the basis of these kind of values and standards, then the first thing is we become very serious, we become very one-dimensionally caught in the whole thing. And the second thing is, when you are not able to be, so to speak, successful, powerful, prestigious, and cannot prove to yourself and to the others you are superior to the other, you are better than the other. With the same standards, you condemn yourself, you put yourself down. You imagine you are not worthy. You imagine that you are not capable to be strong and beat the others in this competition. So this whole thing, being trapped in comparison and competition and the whole judgments around it, makes people very neurotic. And this is what is coming out as depression, burnout, all the psychic problems, and the people going into addiction to avoid confronting this, because in their own eyes they feel worthless, they feel empty, they think they are not okay. What they don't realize is nature has created every one of us unique. And when everybody is unique, how can you compare? You can see clearly the very approach of competition and comparison and the judgments around it, gone about consciously in the best way of using it, it is good for playing, because every play needs rules and regulations and standards and comparisons and all that. But in an unconscious way of going, it becomes the basis for the whole suffering, the whole misery, the whole unsensibility, the whole destructive process. When people are disoriented, don't see the deeper values, don't experience them and understand them, they are trying to fill their life with all kind of peripheral things. And when they are not able to, they get angry, they get violent towards themselves or towards the others. People running amok, becoming violent, becoming destructive. So many people committing suicide. This is not coming from the right understanding. This is coming from very basic misunderstandings about oneself and the reality. Human life is challenging. But we have to see that these challenges are not against us. Nature has created certain kind of framework, and we need to try to understand the nature of our reality. And that is what is going to make the difference. Otherwise, just following the program blindly, trying to prove something, trying to be somebody, comparing, competing. You pass the time, and even when people have become, so to speak, successful, they have achieved all these things, then is the biggest emptiness, then is the biggest feeling of senselessness, hopelessness. They suddenly see that they have all these things, but they don't know how to be loving. They don't know how to listen to each other. They don't know how to consider each other in a careful and sympathetic way. If you have not learned the quality of listening without judging, if you have not learned to look at someone without categorizing, competing, and just be in a sympathetic way, in a compassionate way, then you have not understood life. The problem is also that when we are so much used to this way of judging and comparing and competing and don't know something deeper, we are also closing up. We also get very serious and we try to prove ourselves right everywhere. And this becomes also part of the strategy of the inner automatism, that we are always trying not to get touched. And anything which is coming into questioning, critical aspect, we try to avoid it, to run away from it, to push it away with all kind of explanations or strategies to avoid this confrontation. And this is one of the biggest challenges. Gurdjieff used to call it the Kunda buffer. I'm using an expression which is more understandable because that is very valuable to understand it. I call it the PADS, Program of Automatic Defense System. It is not some military strategy, it is the strategy of the ego, the strategy of the inner automatism not to get touched. We find explanations, we have logical, rational strategies. We try to drift away, we try to make ourselves busy with some things, and we make ourselves feel very important with some other things so that we don't need to confront that which is frightening to us, that where we have no clear, controllable, graspable answer. There are things which people carry as wounds, which are very painful, and they don't know how to deal with it. But very few take initiative to confront it and clear it. There are experiences which people have made where they are very ashamed about. They don't know how to deal with it. There are experiences of people where they don't have any sense of themselves in a clear way. They have not inquired into it. They only know what others say, what others think. So they are focused on the opinions of the others and want to look special, want to look better, want to get such labels from the outside so that you can imagine, at least for some moments, that you are somebody. But this is a misunderstanding. That is why it is very tragic. And the so-called unsensible people, the so-called bad people, the so-called people who are going in unsensible and destructive ways, are not essentially different than us. We all carry the same potential. We all come from the same source. And deep within everyone is good. Everyone is godly. Everyone is divine. Everyone is part of that mystery, part of that wonder. That is why when you look at someone who is sleeping, even the so-called horrible person, when this person is in a deep sleep, it's very difficult for them to sleep deeply. That's another aspect of it. But sometimes when they come into deep sleep, they are also like children. It is so because our being somebody is a very relative thing, and it is part of our entanglement in misunderstanding about ourselves and the reality. So this is also why I often have been mentioning about a different approach in the society, about rules and regulations, about punishment. If we are only just judging and punishing and giving people the feeling of guilt and pushing them back into the same mentality, to the same belief, to the same standards, we are not helping anybody to rise to their heights. We are keeping everybody on the level of the animal, on the level of a robot. Only when the society starts becoming aware that a different approach is necessary, a different understanding is very decisive, and we should not just repeat old ways of reacting and going about, which we can see does not really help, because the prisons are more and more full. More and more people are punished, but they are not coming out and becoming clear and free and becoming healthy in a deeper sense. Most of them get more trapped, more entangled, and they are destroyed in many ways in their inner possibilities, and it becomes more difficult for them to rise above it. So there are many areas where awareness has to come, and they are all interconnected. That is why people who are going about life with more consciousness, people who are considering themselves and their reality more courageously and honestly, and who are not just making themselves satisfied with some kind of explanations and logical, rational theories, but go into a deep, honest encounter with their own reality and come into a way of considering, looking, without getting trapped in the judgments, which is part of our conditioned way of projecting into the reality. Only then you start seeing yourself and the other. As I had been already mentioning before, this is a prerequisite for a more fulfilling, more joyous, more graceful, more peaceful, more loving way of being with oneself and each other. Otherwise, the so-called happiness, what we are running behind in an unconscious way, even if we get all these things what we are wanting, we can see that in the mental process, when you don't have it and you get something, there's an excitement for some moments. But then when you have it, it becomes normal. And then the mind is looking for something else. And you run and run. But when you don't have it, or when you are not able to keep that what you have achieved, the power or the position, or there is some threat to it, there is anxiety, there is worry, or that what you are trying to hold to, if it is changing, then there is pain. So those who look consciously can see that pleasure and pain, the so-called happiness and unhappiness, they are existing together as two sides of the same coin. And we understand and call something as happiness only when we understand also what it means not to have it. When we know unhappiness, then we understand happiness. And this is in the nature of the game of the world. That is why it is called duality. Because you need the opposite. You need darkness so that you can understand light. You need disharmony to understand what harmony is. You need some kind of unhealthy state of the body, some kind of sickness, some kind of unwellness, to be able to understand and appreciate what a blessing it is to be healthy. So, in the very nature of our game of the world, the duality is there and the opposites are existing. as parallel projects, as parallel aspects. You cannot have light without shadow, light without darkness. You can have light, but nobody will understand what light is. If you have all the time only light, and if you speak about light, that what we have is always light, the mind, the logical, rational mind cannot understand it. So the game of the world, which is connected with the logical, rational mind and its way of comparing and categorizing, has a value in the beginning and can, when we use it rightly, become also relevant in the further process, but we need first of all to see its possibility and limitation. We need to see that this way of projecting through the mind and its conditioning and the judgments we make through that is not seeing the reality. That is playing a game, a certain kind of virtual reality. That is why in the East there is an expression that this is Maya. Maya means like a dream world, an illusion. There is another expression where it's called Leela, which means it's like a cosmic play. And it is beautiful when we can have the distance to it. Then the play is not a problem. But when we are so much identified with it, when we don't have any other perspective, and this is the danger. And this is what is the whole basis of the wars, the sufferings, the misery, and the unsensibility which we have towards the nature, and the destructive process which is coming as a result of our insensibility to the nature. And this needs to be understood. Because the whole approach so far has been of achieving power, prestige, success. And everything is judged on the basis of this kind of values. Very few understand to look at life without being caught in this kind of judgment. Even when people are trying to understand processes which are connected with the inner development and connecting to the wholeness, they also judge with the same mentality, with the same standards. They say something is successful when it is more, when it is many, when the numbers are more. But there is some other factor which has to be understood. And that is only possible to be understood. First of all, when we become aware of the limitation of the logical, rational mind and the projection which we are making through it. And it needs a certain courageous and determined way of encountering it. And there's no way to go around it, because if we just go on trying to do some patchwork, repair work, we are only postponing the confrontation. That is why many people are not so excited when I speak about these kind of things like in such a direct way. They would like to have a little bit better, a little bit different, and go on postponing. But that's what we are seeing. Many people are going on postponing with different engagement, with different peripheral kind of solutions, which is not a solution, because it's only trying to cover up the real misunderstanding. And this is what is making the difference. Because without this confrontation, you can also see in the politics everywhere, most of the countries, most of the wars which are coming up in different ways, most of the conflicts, they are all because the preoccupation is with power, with prestige, with fear. And that is where consciousness has to come. That is where the understanding has to deepen, that if you go on with the approach of power, there's no way to succeed in a healthy way. You can destroy, and it's very easy to destroy. To destroy, you don't need much intelligence. Anybody who is caught in some fear, caught in some greed, caught in some misunderstanding can be so determined, and then can go with smallest things into big destructive processes. But to really be creative, to really look what is valuable, what is healthy in deeper sense, and to stand for it is not easy, because you will not be understood by many. People all want immediate results and want to get this kind of patchwork, repair work, so that they can feel better immediately. They don't want to confront. And that is why many politicians have very difficulties when they are really sincere, have much difficulties. But those who are opportunistic, those who are going in a kind of one-sided way of playing power games, they can collect people. And they can be very easily destructive. And that is what you are also seeing in the politics in the world. Also in the European countries, if you see the political developments, also in the American election process, and also the very way some of the politicians who are going sincerely, what difficulties they have. When you see all these things, you can understand that only those who really confront, gather the courage, stay with the understanding, and are not just going into what looks popular, what is opportunistically convenient and supportive to holding to the power. This kind of approach leads to more destructivity. That is why some of the politicians who are sincere, who are trying in their way to take care, they don't have it easy. They need to stay with it. For example, in Germany, we have a chancellor who has been trying in many ways to find a balanced way of going. But she does not have it easy, because there is so much misunderstanding. And it is the same with the American president. He is not having it easy because he is trying to go in a more sensible way. Now, for example, there is this racial violence. Many people from the Afro-American background, they are not so happy when an American president who also has some Afro-American background is not going in this kind of racial standpoint and reacting in that way, but he's emphasizing not to go into hate, not to go into violence. And this is very important, because when you look more deeply, you are not identifying with the periphery. Whether you have a dark skin or a white skin, whether you have a brown skin or a yellow skin, that is not the point. To which race we belong? We have to belong somewhere, we have to come in some bodies. But to remember that we are all human beings, we are all part of something deeper, something very wondrous, and to take care of that. To orient to compassion, to orient to love, to orient to a creative way of being with a life, that is not easy. And when you are orienting to that, you will not have so much understanding. But those who see that they need to bring this consciousness and stay with this in raising the understanding. That is why I have been just saying the other day to a friend that we have encountered in the last century, which has continuing to this century, one of the biggest challenges for humanity. When the HIV virus was coming, suddenly people saw that it could catch anybody who is going in free contact with their sexuality. On one side, the freedom and the openness was happening, but parallel to that, there was this virus, HIV. And I say that we have another HIV problem in the more deeper sense. That is our entanglement in hate, ignorance, and violence. And this is the trap. Many politicians are entangling themselves in this hate, ignorance, and violence and holding to their standpoint. Not to hold to the hate and not to hold to some kind of one-sided way of looking and not to propagate violence. You need to confront yourself. That is what I mean with the work of consciousness. You need to confront your fears. You need to try to understand life. You need to go deeper into seeing what is possible, what is not possible. So this deeper kind of HIV virus is the real challenge. And it is good that in the political area there are people who are having understanding, but many are not having that understanding. In many societies, in many countries, the whole system is running still on the emphasis on power and prestige, and they are trying to perpetuate it. Now, for example, in the American election situation, the whole thing is so polarized. There is, for the first time, a woman standing to become the president. That itself is a big challenge to a modern Western society which has been emphasizing very much on this male approach of power, prestige, violence. And it needs awareness, it needs understanding. She is one of the very rare capable persons because she has had the experience of being in touch with the political system, has been in different roles and has become ripe. So it is a great blessing that someone like that is ready to go into politics and continue to take responsibility. But it is not easy for her because she is pestered from different sides with all kinds of accusations. And it is not easy, but I would recommend all those who are going in these political areas and taking up responsible steps to really again and again gain distance to these roles, find the right inner balance so that you don't react to the negativity in a negative way, so that you don't get lost in the negativity and misunderstanding which is coming from the outside by becoming disappointed, depressed, resignated, bitter. You have to stay awake inwardly, confronting what is valuable, attuning to that, and gaining the strength from your inner being, from the source, that what is sacred in us. And that is what is going to make the difference, because that is what will make an impact. And life is supporting us to move in that direction. We cannot go backward into the primitive, violent-oriented, blind, destructive process and continue on this life, continue the life on this planet. That is not possible. And as I said, anybody who is just hurt, who is trapped in misunderstanding and who is suppressed and who is more persecuted or intimidated, they can come into violence. We have to try to understand everybody, try to connect to everybody very compassionately. Only then, when there is the understanding that it is not just blind struggle going on, that there is someone trying to understand you, there is some support for you, and that is possible, that is needed, then people rise to their heights. We have to learn to go beyond the blind entanglement in our fear and greed. When we are only punishing, when we are only just supporting, because some people have been following a certain popularly accepted norms and concepts, we will not have a society, we will not have a humanity which can live gracefully, peacefully, joyously. And we need to bring understanding and insight in these areas. And that is what is going to make the real difference. That is why I have been starting this project called Transform the World from Within. It is an initiative to remind everybody that, look, if you really are interested, if you are sincerely interested, if you are only just wanting to fool around and pass time, then you don't need to listen to me. But if you are sincerely interested, you should consider. Only when we understand ourselves more deeply, when we connect to ourselves, we confront the issues which are in us and take help where it is necessary, then we come into a deeper way of understanding each other, a deeper way of understanding life. And through that, spontaneously, we start doing the right things. Because when you see how much we are so similar, when you see that everyone, when you see it first of all in yourself, your own innermost helplessness, innocence, childlike quality, and see that the other is also in their way trying to come in terms with life, trying to find happiness, find love, be here joyously, then you can see that it is not the right thing just to go blindly into this fighting and suppressing and punishing and condemning approach, giving people guilt feeling and going in the old way. That is no more the right approach. And in every area, in politics, in religious teachings, this awareness has to come. Because many things which was happening in the religious areas have been following this misunderstanding. And without the real experience of what is meant with those teachings originally, everything is made into some kind of controlling, manipulative, political process. So politics was not only in the governmental level, the politics was happening also in the religious name. And that is why everywhere it is high time to bring the awareness. We don't need to go into condemning anybody, but we need to really be honest to look what is intelligent, what is valuable, what is realistic, what is human, what is really loving. And gather the courage, take the initiative, be committed to take steps in this direction. And this is what I mean with transform the world from within. Of course, you can use different aspects to understand yourself, different methods, different exercises, different way of encountering yourself, but you have to start working on yourself. And this is a project which I am bringing out Also in the internet you can see that there is some material being brought in, and I will be bringing in some more material to make it more supportive for all those who want to start. And there are also other aspects which are very, very valuable in the same direction. That what we understand is significant. We have to bring it into living. Not only practicing our understanding in certain levels, but we also can bring it out into making certain things visible to people as to what is valuable, what is significant, what is important. So the aspect of sacredness of life has been very much forgotten. We have been very much trapped in the utilitarian way of going. What is useful, what is successful, what is powerful, what is making it easier and comfortable for us, and not considering what is really life. Not understanding that behind the obvious there is something hidden. That when we look at a tree and see only the body of the tree as the stem and the branches and the leaves and the flowers and the fruits, that is only one aspect of it. Hidden behind is another reality, the roots. And not only the roots, the very earth which is carrying the tree and its reality, that is where we come into the mystery, where we come into the awareness that we are able to have the tree where the tree can grow there. The first thing is we see that there are roots, and the second thing is that life has created the basis that when we put a seed, it can grow into a plant, become a tree, flower, bear fruits. This is not to be taken for granted. This is the biggest and very mysterious aspect, that life has prepared the ground, created the basis, that we are able to be here, that the human beings have come to manifest with this capacity of intelligence, of consciousness, that life has come to manifest in such a varietyful way, with all the beauty, with all the playfulness. And we take it all for granted. We don't often take even some moments to see that all what we are taking for granted are not to be taken for granted, because any moment death can come, any moment it all can change, and we can fall into much suffering and pain when we are not considering it. But we are going often without recognizing that it is in understanding life that you come to live the real beauty, the real joy, the real glory of life, and live gracefully, live with the awareness of the sacredness. So I have been considering that it would be valuable when we have sacred flash mobs in every town, in every village, in every part of big cities. This is the perspective I want everybody to consider, to initiate flash mobs in your way, through the social media, through Facebook, through Twitter, through WhatsApp, to bring about a way of making it conscious to everybody that when we take some moments of silence, and all who understand the significance of something deeper, for whom it is somehow feelable, understandable, I would recommend them to take this initiative. Then all people who have this kind of a sensibility come together, spend 15 minutes in any public place where everybody is welcome, where nobody is trying to change anybody, where nobody's judging in each other, where everybody's being peacefully, quietly together. You can be in your meditative way of being, you can be with your prayer, you can be with just the simple observation of the moment. You can observe your breath and the wonder of it. You can observe the nature around and be in touch with the wonder of it. So it is just a space of silence, inner quietness, where we are not going into competition and comparison and interference with life. That is what I call sacred. And this, when we can bring the attention in different ways, that will be very valuable. So the first aspect is to have this possibility of the flash mob, where everybody with different backgrounds come together, whatever be their religion, whatever be their spiritual orientation, whatever be their normal kind of way of calling themselves. You just accept and respect each other. Make it visible to everybody to come together and for 15 minutes create a space. Make this welcoming, make this place interesting in a celebrative way, and take care of this, what is sacred, through your understanding, through your deeper sensibility. I have been also considering another way of bringing this sacred mob, flash mob, that is in the tradition of some of the Zen monks. There were in the ancient Chinese tradition 3 people. Their wisdom was shared in a very different way. They didn't go into any preaching, they didn't go into telling anybody anything. They would go into the marketplace of some village or some town, start laughing, and laugh and laugh. And people came to ask, why are you laughing? What is the matter? What is happening? They don't give any logical, rational reply. They just laugh. And the laughter has something very beautiful. It is infectious. And when you are a little bit open, you also feel the playfulness and the joy of laughter. And if you allow the laughter, and mostly people allow, because most of the people can feel it. It's only when we normally don't have such opportunities, we are also remaining trapped in our seriousness. But when people can be in a laughing way, and especially not laughing at somebody, it is not trying to be nasty to anybody, just simple, playful, pure laughter. And it becomes a kind of infectious thing. And they were observing it, that as more and more people came, they all joined the laughter because it was beautiful, it was playful, and it was also touching them. So they all started enjoying it, they all started going into it. And by, when the whole village was gathering there, it's full of laughter, and the whole atmosphere of the area was from a different energy of playfulness and joy, these 3 disappeared quietly. I found it a very valuable basis. And these are the kind of flash mobs we can also bring, where people come for 10 or 15 minutes just to laugh. Laugh playfully, laugh like a child, laugh from the whole belly, laugh with the whole body, and allow everybody to come and join in it. And then after the laughter, have some moments of quietness, just to feel the moment when we are not holding to anything, when we are again like a little child, when we are again in a playful state, when we are simply open to feel what life is. This can be very, very valuable. This is what I would recommend as the second version of sacred flash mob. And I have one more perspective about it. And the third possibility of the sacred flash mob is, nowadays we have possibilities with our smartphones, with our Android, with our little tablets, to have so much music. And with the Bluetooth and the connections of wireless ways, you can connect to some loudspeakers which are sometimes so small, but they have such an impact. So nowadays making music and playing it somewhere like that is not so difficult. So someone who would take this initiative, inform people for a flash mob through the social media, and say, okay, at around such and such a time, at this part of the town, and then later on in another part of the town, we are going to make 15 minutes to half an hour music for dancing freely. So that nobody is dancing any particular dance or any particular, they can also dance, but this is general music which everybody can dance playfully, freely, joyously. Everybody can come in their way and join in it. To have this dancing and celebration for 15 minutes to half an hour, and then have again some moments of quietness and silence. Just like after the laughter, 5 to 10 minutes of silence like that. Also after the dance, 10 to 15 minutes sitting or lying down and just be in this restful inner quietness. This can be a very beautiful way to bring attention for ourselves and also for the others. We are not going in any aggressive way trying to change anybody. We are not doing any missionary work for anything. We are not trying to compare and compete with anybody. But it is simply bringing attention that there is something deeper, something sacred, something which we need to bring our attention to in order to also make it possible that we as human beings can live together in a more peaceful, more graceful, more loving way on this planet. And there is a great need, as you were reading the quotation before, it is exactly that what is required. When more and more people who have sensibility, who have some understanding, take the initiative to bring this understanding in a non-aggressive way. Inwardly to be committed to confront themselves so that you don't react to the negativity in a blind and negative way, but through your understanding, through your intelligence, through a creative, compassionate basis. Recognizing that anybody who is in a blind and negative way going does not need to be punished and destroyed and condemned, because then we are going ourselves in the same level. We need to understand that they are in a certain way like that because there are some basic misunderstandings. So our emphasis should be to bring understanding. This is where in systems which are becoming more conscious, the approach of punishment will be very different. It will be to help people to bring a deeper understanding of life and to make them understand what is wrong when we say it is not good to do it like this, or when certain orientations are given, what is meant with it. Otherwise, just to follow rules and regulations blindly or to be against them blindly, both are blindness. What is required is to help everybody to understand what is wrong when we say something is not okay. What is the sense behind it in a deeper level. And this is what is, for example, in one of the ancient insightful expressions, it is said that the true well-being of one human being is the true well-being of all. It's a very valuable insight because it is referring to the deep interconnectedness of life. And that is what is very important when we come to the experiential understanding of it. That is what makes us inwardly clear and free, and also help us to not be a slave of our fear and greed. Fear and greed are connected with state of not confronting ourselves, and also part of entanglement in one-sided way of looking at life. We need to bring understanding through seeing what is life, what we are. So these sacred Flasmobs will be also one of our contributions to bring this understanding into life process. And everybody can, in different ways, through their own encountering and understanding themselves, bring into the world as a byproduct. When you are clear, your acts will have the quality of love, because the innermost basis of the life itself can be called of the nature of love.